Hey you guys, I wanted to share I've just filled up my tank and I wanted to share some steps that I'm doing in terms of keeping my engine clean and not increasing wear using an ethanol mix. Because look at, if we're going to tune our cars, whether we use an actual flash tune or we use a JB4, you know, we might be using ethanol, and I use E30. I have it's readily available here, and because I want to make a little extra horsepower. But you know what ethanol introduces, more ethanol in your fuel system is going to introduce more water into your system, because the alcohol attracts water. So getting water into your fuel system isn't good, because it increases corrosion in any of the metal parts in your system. So fuel lines, injectors, your pistons. So you want to prevent that, right? And then another thing that ethanol is going to possibly do is also dilute your oil as water collects there over time. That's going to reduce the viscosity, and you know, I've read studies that show that it's going to accelerate engine wear on components. So you got corrosion, you have accelerated engine wear. What can we do to kind of mitigate these issues? So the first thing that I've done is I've gone ahead and bought this, which is a Lucas ethanol stabilizer for my fuel system. So this is going to inhibit, you know, corrosion. This is relatively cheap. You should be able to buy a 16-ounce bottle for about $10, and you only need about 1.75, maybe 2 ounces. You know, if you're doing 16 ounces, this is a 5.25 ounce bottle, but if you're doing 16 ounces, you get 8 fill-ups if you use 2 ounces per fill-up, right? And how do you know how much 2 ounces is? Well, it doesn't say on the bottle, so use a shot glass. That's what I do. And make sure it's glass and not plastic, because the chemicals in here might put plastic into your fuel system if you use a plastic glass. So use a shot glass, measure it out. You know, if it's $10 for 16 ounces and you get 8 fill-ups out of that, that's pretty cheap, and for a little bit of peace of mind. So that's the first thing that I do. The second thing you're going to want to consider is you're going to want to consider a change in your oil. And more specifically, you're going to want to consider increasing the viscosity a little bit, maybe 1 grade higher, to account for the dilution that the increased water migration is going to do to your oil capacity. So what is generally recommended is to go 1 step higher. So for our engines, B58, which commonly use a 020 grade, I would step it up to the 530, which actually is an alternate in terms of recommendation for our engines. So just go to the 530 from the 020. Second, you're going to want to use a synthetic oil. So a good quality one like Redline, or I'm sure there's a number of other ones. I know Redline has one that it's called the Professional Grade Series, which they claim is really good with ethanol engines. Look, at ethanol makes a lot of power, but has the potential to make a lot of power. But if you look at ethanol racing engines, they change the oil like after every drag race. You know, they might have 3 runs during a particular drag race event, and they change the oil. So there's a very famous engine builder on YouTube. I forgot his name, but his daughter has a WRX STI, and they're using E85 in it. And after 2,000 miles, the amount of sludge that was built up in that engine, and it consequently failed, and because of the corrosion, was insane. So, you know, you got to keep water out of there, and you got to, you know, increase the viscosity to account for the dilution, but also not only change the oil, maybe increase the viscosity, but change it more frequently. So while I don't know if 2,000 is the right number, there is certainly no issues with changing your oil more frequent, other than your wallet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to obviously continue to use this in my tank, but I'm going to change my oil after 1,500 miles. And then I'm going to send it off to Blackstone to get a report on the metals in there, and as well as the everything else in there, so water content, stuff like that. So that will give a kind of a more definitive picture. But I certainly would not go, especially if you're doing a lot of city driving where your engine doesn't get up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit where the water evaporates. I certainly would not go to 5,000. So I do a lot of city driving. My engine doesn't always get up to temperature when I'm doing runs to the store and back. So this is something you want to consider if you're not doing long drives, is both putting this, you know, and it could be another ethanol treatment in your engine, as well as changing your oil more frequently with a little bit higher viscosity grade. Okay, so just some tidbits for you guys out there that are using ethanol and doing short trips. You might want to consider these things. All right, thanks for tuning. Take care.